Thank you.
I was actually hoping my mechutenista was going to read it. No?
Thank you so much.
No?
I'd love to.
Okay, fine. I just want to understand how unconventional, but okay. So one of the advantages of listening to a speaker beforehand is you can basically plagiarize what they wrote. So I actually listened to the entire speech. You'll see I'm going to actually glean some things from Mrs. Juravel and try to create a thought. Do I want to use the mic? Meaning you're not hearing me or you're not hearing me? Ah, great. I got to hold it up here? Okay. Hold up closer to my mouth? This is so uncomfortable. Much better?
Much better.
Okay, fine. Okay. Now we'll do it this way. We'll be fine. When Mrs. Feld called me, she said that you have to come up with, I got to get closer. Can everybody hear me without this? No, I need the mic. Okay, we're going to try it this way.
Much better.
Much better? Okay. When Mrs. Feld called me and asked me, she said, "What do you stand for?" And it sounded like I had to come up with a bumper sticker that's going to be within about... But truth is, it might not be a bumper sticker, but I really do believe, I know myself, my attention span as to what I stand for can't really last longer than 45 minutes. It's just going to be too hard to maintain. So we're going to try to come up with an idea, and actually I have to thank Mrs. Juravel, because she quoted Hill's statement, Imani kan hakol kan. And I'm going to explain a little bit differently that she did, but that is going to be the message that I want to come out with. But now let's go on our journey to get to that message. She talked about the idea that we saw from Corona what one germ could do, and she wants to express we should think how much tov can happen from one act. I want to tell you a story about my father. I am now in the Yud Beis Chodesh of my father, and I want to tell you how a person didn't realize they were changing the world. So to understand where my father came from, my father grew up in a non-frum family. My father was in public school until the end of 6th grade. And my father was Makurev by J.J. Hecht. By Lubavitch, they convinced him in what was called a release hour. At that point in time, my father barely just learned how to read. He was becoming bar mitzvahed, and he went to the day school, and they would pull him out for an hour, and he became inspired. And the decision was that he and his first cousin wanted to go to yeshiva. So I'll deal with his first cousin first. His first cousin went to his parents and said, "You know what, I want to go to yeshiva. I want to enter into yeshiva in seventh grade. His first cousin's parents said, "You know what, you're doing great in Talmud Torah. If for high school you want to go to yeshiva high school, that's, we'll support it then, but why change your entire life? Give up all your friends, give up all the structure that you know, going to some school." It says 2 more years, stay in the Talmud Torah for another 2 years, and then we'll decide for high school. You'll be old enough then to commute and so on and so forth. My father said that sadly, his first cousin never went to yeshiva. His first cousin, unfortunately, fell into the annals of history, of much of Jewish history in the United States. His first cousin married a non-Jewish woman and was lost, as many as millions of others have been lost. My father, on the other hand, my grandparents decided to bring him for the interview. And the interviewer, it was for a place called David Leibowitz, and the interviewer said, "You know what, you're a smart young man, you're able to, limudei chol, you're able to go into 7th grade, but you just learned how to read. What am I going to do with you? We don't have a resource room, we don't have any resources to be able to help you. What am I going to do?" My father said, "So put me in 2nd grade. My father was 6 foot tall. He was 12 and a half years old at the time. And he basically described not being able to get his feet underneath the table. So now, that was the story we all knew. It was a legendary story we all knew growing up. It was a story about our father. At the Shiva, my father's chavrusa came and described to us 3 stories that gave us true perspective. He told us that our grandfather said to him, you know what, if you want to go to yeshiva, you can, but I don't think you're going to really survive. You have no friends, your cousins, nobody Shomer Shabbos. In other words, how are you going to have such a total change in your life? So his chavrusa that came to him was 2 years younger than him. I knew him. His name was Nehemiah Zabrowski. So he came to the shiva. He said, you know what happened? When your father decided to go to yeshiva, he decided he had to have a whole new set of friends. So he said we went, and I was one of the Frum families at that point in time in Brownsville. He searched us out. I'm 2 years younger than him. But his new friend, he goes, he's 6 foot tall. I'm about 4.5 feet at the time, or whatever it was. I'm 2 years younger than him. He goes, but we became best of friends. He says, I remember standing on the sidewalk when an uncle had bought a brand new convertible, and all the cousins and friends on the block were taking their rides on Shabbos Kodesh. And your father had the strength of character to say, no, I'm not going to. But that's still not the message I want for you. Listen to this story. So he barely learned how to read. How did he ever get up to par? So we all believe, and we never know where we are, and what brought us to why we're all here today. I'm going to tell you unbelievable siyata d'shmaya. In Brownsville, New York, there was a farm. There was a Chol Yisrael farm. And there was a huge goyin who came over from Europe who didn't speak English. Couldn't find a job except for to be a mashgiach of Chol Yisrael milk on this farm. He was stuck there on Shabbos. Rav Heinemann described it to me. He would stand behind a glass window watching the animals go by, and this was the goyin. He was considered a muflug in Europe. This is what he was relegated to. He was a mashgiach for a Chol Yisrael farm on Shabbos away from his family. And then a 12-year-old boy and a 10-year-old boy came over to him and said, do you mind teaching us Gemara? My father and his chavrusa would walk every Shabbos to a Chol Yisrael farm, and this man would sit and teach my father Gemara. In the end, he thought he was creating kashrus on some milk in Brownsville. He's the reason why my father was able to make it to yeshiva. We don't know why we're put in the circumstances. Then there was a young Rav who had almost no constituents, and those that he had were marginally Shomer Shabbos. His name was Rabbi Juravel. And the same 10-year-old boy and 12-year-old boy during the week would walk and trek to his house and ask him to please learn with us Gemara. This Rabbi Juravel's son is a person by the name of Avi Juravel, who is esteemed in the entire world in terms of kashrus, worked for my father, and his grandson is Pinchas Juravel, who works for us. We don't know how much of a change we can make. But it was on a farm in Brownsville, speaking Yiddish to a person who knew some Yiddish because of his grandparents, and teaching a little boy how to read Gemara changed my family for the rest of time. So, for me, chizuk is to realize that we don't know what we're building. But now I want to give you my message. I want to tell you what my message is not. So we're all moved and inspired by public events. And they're scary. But I have a certain perspective on current events. If we go through the Haftarah, Klal Yisrael was never greater inspired than the story of Eliyahu Hanavi at Har Carmel. We're going to learn through the past couple of weeks Haftarah. There was a showdown between Eliyahu Hanavi and the Nevi Abal. Eish came in a Shemayim, shot down, destroyed the Nevi'ei Baal. Klal Yisrael screamed in unison, Hashem hu Elokim, Hashem hu Elokim. They were inspired. They had unbelievable chizuk. They were moved to change their lives. They saw the Yad Hashem come. There was no denying the facts. We thought the world would be different after 9/11. We thought the world would be different after Corona. We thought we would be able to say Hashem hu Elokim. But then let's continue. The Navi then describes how Izeva was not very happy. She wound up killing all the Nevi'im. Left Eliyahu Navi by himself. Eliyahu Navi had a whole argument. Eliyahu Navi brought a Rav. He brought a famine onto the world, convinced that I'm going to bring tshuva through famine. It didn't work. Suddenly Eliyahu Navi now has to be running away. Eliyahu Navi is simply running for his life. And in this week's Haftarah, it's not the one we read, but the Haftarah of Pinchas, HaKadosh Baruch Hu appears to him and he asks him, Vayomer Malacha Poelio, how did we get here? And that's the question we all ask. How did we get here? When we have challenges in life, the first question that we're supposed to ask is, how did we get here? And I'm going to take a pause for a moment, and I'm going to turn your world a little bit upside down, because if you say it's unconventional, I have a different approach than 90% of the people in the world. We have an expression that we look at negatively. It's actually a pasuk. V'amarta b'lvavcha koichi v'otzim yadi asili asachayil hazeh. What does the pasuk mean when it says you win a war and you get up and you say koichi v'otzim yadi asili asachayil hazeh? Is that a bad thing to say or a good thing to say? What? It's a bad thing. That's what? Convention. Okay. Kochi, my strength. V'otzim yadi, and it's another word for strength of my hand. Asali has done hachayil hazeh, has accumulated this wealth, has caused my success. It's kafira. Okay, good. I think I better leave. Okay.
If you say that the wealth is because of me or the success is because of me.
So that's why I will tell you, that's why I'm conventional. And I'll explain to you why. Most people do explain it exactly the way you said, and you are correct. That listen to what the pasuk says. What?
Do you mind repeating in English?
Okay, let me think. They had just won a battle. The pasuk is describing that a war was won. And the national tendency of when we accomplish things, when the war happens, what do we say? We get a little bit of extra pep in our step. We're walking around, we're a little bit proud of what we're doing. So the nature of what it is when you speak in your heart, the ability and the strength of my own hand has accomplished this. So we are normally accustomed to be taught, exactly the way you're saying, that it's clear. No, it's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So let me read to you the pasuk, and let's see when we read the pasuk, what the pasuk is saying. V'zocharta, and remember, es Hashem Elokecha, Hashem your God, ki hu nosein lacha, because He gave you koyach lasos chayil. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who gave you the capabilities. Are we denying the fact that our capabilities help it? No. That's not what the pasuk is telling us. The pasuk is not telling us to deny that we have capabilities. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given every single person in this room a unique capability. And if we say that everything that we accomplish is purely just siyata d'shmaya, then we're denying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us koiches. The pasuk does not say, don't believe that you have koiches. Let's read it again. Remember Hashem your God. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given you each unique skills. It is Ekev Perches Pasuk Yud Zayin. Why? For us to accomplish things in this world, we have to embrace the fact that we have skills. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us those skills. And we have to connect to them. And of course, we'll never be matzliach without siyata d'shma. You are 100% correct. But we have to see what our koichos are. Novel, why was Novel punished? It was beautiful. You read the book. You read Rav Lau's book. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach sat with Rav Lau and told him, "You're the one who's going to have to stand up and say Tehillim. You're going to be the one who's going to speak." He said, "Who am I?" Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach said, "Who are you?" He said, "You want to know why the Medrash says Novel lost everything that he had? Because he had a beautiful voice. And he didn't want to sing. He decided he didn't want to sing. He did not connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's gift to him. If you deny your gifts, you're denying your tafkid. We all have... It's echoing in the other room?
If it's possible not to use the mic and we can still hear that that's the request that's been made,
Okay, can you? I have an idea. Where's the speaker? Speaker's in the back.
Just connected to
What?
Okay. Maybe you're saying just to stand
The back? Okay, fine. We'll try. Okay, I'm going to try to project without it, so it won't go so far. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach told Rav Lau, embrace your skills. So therefore, we have to recognize that we can affect change. And if things go well, we should have to recognize HaKadosh Zachar, to remember that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ki Hu Nosen L'Chakayach. And if sadly things go wrong, we have to take responsibility. We know it's all Ratzon Hashem and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it was divinely inspired. But we have to go and analyze why Chas v'Shalom something went wrong. HaKadosh Baruch Hu looked at Eliyahu Hanavi, and he said, how did we get here? What was your part in this story? So initially the pasuk says, "Vayomer kano kanesi l'Hashem Elokai." I fought a good fight. I stood up for what was right. Elokai tzavah ki azvu brischa Hashem. I was fighting your fight. Bnei Yisrael es mizbechasecha harasu. They've desecrated your mizbech, your altars. V'esnviacha hargu, and they killed your neviim. Ve'vasar ani levadi, and I'm all by myself. Vayivakshu es nafshi lakacha, and they want to kill me. Eliyahu Hanavi saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's their fault why I'm here. And this is not me speaking. The Tana Debei Eliyahu, and so we can see the Tana Debei Eliyahu, and we'll get to it at the end, says that this is why the Nevuah passed from Eliyahu to Elisha. So the Navi was not happy with this response. But let's continue what happens.
He's passing the baton.
This is where the baton passed. That's the end of the Nevuah. That's clearly what the Tana Debei Eliyahu says. But let's continue. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes b'Nevuah to Eliyahu Hanavi. And what does he say? The pasuk says, "V'nei Hashem over." HaKadosh Baruch Hu passes in front of him. V'ruach gedayla v'chazak. A unbelievably strong wind comes. Mefarak haram u'mishaber slime, uprooting mountains, destroying rocks. L'fnei Hashem. But then Hashem says, "Lo beruach Hashem." That's not where you'll find Hashem. V'achar a ruach rash. There came unbelievable thunder. Lo barash Hashem. It is not in this earthquake, it is not in the thunder. V'achar rash eish, and after the rash came a fire. Lo be'esh Hashem. The pasuk says, you will not find Hashem in the fire. V'achar eish kol demama dako. There is a soft spoken word. I remember Rav Gifter to this day talking about my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather was a Rosh Hashiva, who I'm named after, who had a very, he had a problem with his voice. He couldn't speak. Rav Gifter described that my Zayda would keep his finger on the table, and when he would want to start shir, he'd go like this, and the Bachur would fall silent. He'd give shir, open it up for questions, there'd be animated dialogue. When he wanted to stop again, the Rebbe would have to go like this. So much more is heard with a kol demama daka. We are all experiencing the rash, the thunder, the lightning. We thought the world would be different. It will only be different is, as like you said, there's a message, a soft message that rings in my ear that I carry with me always. If I can know what that kol demama daka is supposed to be, if I can come up with that message and not look for life to be inspired by kol eish rash, but I can find something to hear that inner voice. That's where the Navi is saying it's found. Eliyahu Navi, it's not found by the miracles in Har Carmel. It's found by if you can inspire a person and touch them, that there be a different inner voice. So what is that inner voice? And what is the message that I want to come? And what is the message I would like to convey to you? So I remember Rabbi Tzipora Heller was in my house, and I posed the exact same question to her. But I only gave her 5 minutes. I said, Rabbi Tzipora Heller, if you were able to sit down in a casual way, really talking, Dvar Mayotzim and Alev, if you were really going to talk to people in a way that you can really put a message that will touch their hearts. Literally, the heart is open. There's none of this, all the things that impede us from hearing. What is that message that you will convey to that person in 5 minutes? And Rabbi Tzipora Heller responded to me with the following, and she told over a story. She told over a story that a soldier was evicting a father and son from Gush Etzion, and the fight was happening because the settlers didn't leave so quickly. And the soldier looked at the father and said, "Why do we have to go through this? You know you're going to be thrown out. You know you're not going to. I'm going to have to evict you. Why fight it? You know what destiny is. You know what the destiny is. Why the fight?" So the father said to the soldier, he said, "I want my son to know that there's something worth standing shoulder to shoulder for, to fight and stand up for principles that I believe in." And to me it was a beautiful message that she said. And it is a fantastic message. The caveat that I'm going to make is, I want a message that goes every single day. That is the call, that is the rash, that is a message that, you know what, I believe that most of the people in our room will tell us that our biggest challenge is every day. It's not that big fight, it's not the one-time event. The ultimate is the challenge of day-to-day life. So I would like to come to a message that touches people's minds and hearts, that is more everyday oriented. A kol demama daka. So once again, now my message, let's go back to what Mrs. Juravel said. Emani kan hakol kan. She said that in the name of Hillel HaZaken. What does that mean? So therefore, I am going to go ahead and explain to you what the word kol means. And when we say hakol kan, then I think we'll be able to come to an explanation. So first, I want to tell you a story in order to understand what we're looking for with Hakol. So Rav Twersky was getting up and was speaking about the concept of marriage. And he was trying to explain what makes a marriage survive, flourish. So he focused on, well, the first of the Sheva Brachos is Sha'akol bara l'chvodo. The first message that we're giving to a young couple is Sha'akol bara l'chvodo. Everything in this world was made only for kavod Shemayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world for one purpose, that we should give kavod Shemayim. Well, most of us understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world in order to be meitiv to us. It wasn't that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was trying to provide kavod for himself. Why do we say Sha'akol bara l'chvodo? So he described his parents. And he said his parents were engaged through a basho. He said his father saw his mother from across the room. They made a nice shidduch, and that was it, and they got married. He said clearly not what the West would define as romance. He then described, sadly, his father was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And his father knew he was going to die. He called his son in, and he said, "You're a doctor. You know that anything short of a nes nigla, I'm not going to survive." He says, however, Mommy got in contact with a certain doctor, and that doctor convinced her that there's an alternate medicine that I'm going to be able to live with, and she wants me to go on this alternate medicine. I am going to have to endure months of pain to go through this process. He says, and you're going to want to go to Mommy and tell Mommy to leave me alone. And you're going to try to convince Mommy not to do this alternate medicine. And I am asking you today, I know Mommy will never forgive herself if she did not convince me to do this. So let me do the last chesed of my life, of going through this entire process, so that I can provide your mother with menuchas hanefesh. Rabbi Twersky said, could you imagine when in life a person could be more self-centered and understandably self-centered when they have just been given a diagnosis that they are terminally ill, and they could spend their life so often, I'm victimized, become totally self-centered. He said, my father was able to live beyond himself, even at the most trying of times, and think about his spouse. He says, to me, there's nothing more romantic than understanding a person living a life devoted to another person. And he said, why? Because he understood that his wife was his shutif, was his partner in Sha'akol bara l'chvodo. But what is, once again, but Rabbi Twersky, what does that mean? He understood that she was his life partner in Sha'akol bara l'chvodo. What does it mean? I will explain to you now what it means. What does it mean, Sha'akol bara l'chvodo? And I grew up in a family of 4 boys. We fought all the time. But we always got into arguments. It was natural. Some of you are laughing because you probably realize your experience. It was very common. So I was always bothered by a dialogue between Esav and Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov is sending the gifts to Esav, and Esav says, Yesh li Rav, I have so much. Yaakov wants to one-up him and says, Yesh li Kol. So what's really the dialogue? What is going on, the dialogue between Esav and Yaakov? So let's define what kol means. Well, first, we know the pasuk says that the reason why the klalos come, tachas asher lo avadat Hashem Elokecha b'simcha, simcha, merov kol. You thought you had everything. You should have been berov kol. Are we supposed to be b'simcha? Was it berov or was it kol? So what is kol? Hashem beirachas Avram ba'kol. It's our children. pasuk says it very clearly. Hashem Beirach es Avram Bakol. Rashi says a daughter, or another midrashim say a son. If we have to understand what our entire world is. Yaakov Avinu says, "V'chol asher titen li, v'chol asher titen li, asir asiren loch." I can have, if you put me in a position of having kol, then I can give everything away. How does a person have kol? How do we have everything? So, in reality, it's impossible. Hashem created a world that has an oxymoron that doesn't work. What's the thing that doesn't work? Chazal tell us, yesh lo mana, ratzon masayim. It's the nature of person. Look at the world at large. Billionaires are not happy. They're always striving for more. Yesh li mana, ratzon masayim. On the other hand, Chazal tell us, ezu asher samech b'chelko. But I can't be. I will never be happy because yesh li mana, if I have 100, I want 200. If Hashem built it into our genes, into our DNA, that that's the way we're supposed to be, so then how can Hashem tell us to be happy with our chelik? Decent question. The Rabbeinu Yonah was so bothered by this question, he said chelko has to be chelik shel Torah. That it means we all have a currency. We all have something that has value to us. And whatever I put currency on, I will never be happy with that. I want more and more of that. The Chavetz Chaim was very ill, and they were trying to convince the Chavetz Chaim to go to Knesset HaGedolah. He said, no, medically I can't go. Finally, they pushed him, he gave a clap on the table. Even for 1,000,000 mitzvahs, I won't go. We understand what people's currencies are. The Gemara Makkah says that Oyev Kesef, one who loves money, lo yisba kesef, will never be satiated by money. Who is that? The Gemara says, Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, the Oyev Kesef? Yes. It says, because he had a different currency, the Gemara Makkah says. His currency was mitzvahs, and he built Ari Miklat even though he knew they weren't going to work. He built the 3 Ari Miklat in Ever Liam even though he didn't know they were going to work. He knew they weren't going to work yet until Yeshua built them. We all have currencies. And Oyev Kesef, Lo Yisba Kesef. We'll never be satiated. And we should always be driving and having a thrive, and we're looking for it. But what is kol? What is everything that we have? Now, also, I happen to think that she said beautifully, it says, happiness is a relationship which I already, is the relationship with what I already have. I think that was the terminology she used. So, that was stated actually by Rabbi Victor Miller. So, what did Rabbi Victor Miller say? And if you hear what Rabbi Victor Miller said, it's unbelievable. Again, Ezu Asher Samech Bechalko, what does that mean? So, we normally understand that to mean, Samech Bechalko means what? Meaning, what context? The what? So, whatever, which kind of sounds, if Hashem gave it to me, I have to be happy, right?
Happy with the way Hashem loves you.
Happy the way Hashem. So listen to what Rabbi Victor Miller says, which you see the statement he said. He said, Chazal aren't going to just give us a bumper sticker without telling us how to get there. He said, no, rejoice in what you have. Ezu Asher Hamisameach, one who rejoices with what they have. That means wake up in the morning and enjoy what you have. I had a young man the house was foreclosing on him. He was sitting in the basement of his house refusing to go upstairs. And he was despondent about how my kids, of course we saved the house, but that wasn't the point. He was sitting there, I go, Beryl, we'll call him. Right now, your kids know one thing. Your wife's in one room crying, you're downstairs crying downstairs, and all they really want to do is play Othello. And I was go upstairs and spend some time with him. And it was an amazing conversation because every time he would come into my office, I have the best wife, I have the best kids, but finances. It's just like, you check off all the good things that you have, and then you ignore, and because the one thing that's bothering you. And I'm not minimizing it, but Rabbi Miller is saying, you want to be an usher, misameach, rejoice it. He said, get up in the morning, smell the roses. Stop in the rat race for a certain period of time, and actually enjoy it. It's giving us a method to get there. So, the definition of what we're looking for is it's hakol. So the 2 points that I want to express is that first we have to recognize the bracha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. And then we have to understand that everything that Hashem gives us is to help facilitate that end tafkid. Let me explain to you what I mean. The Medrash says that when Esav and Yaakov Avinu confronted each other, Esav said to Yaakov, he says, I don't understand. Yitzchak, our father, gave me Olam Hazeh and gave you Olam Haba. He goes, this was not the division. This is not our agreement. He says, why are you having all this mikna rav? Why do you have all these cattle? The Medrash says that Esav said, what are you doing with this? And the Medrash responds that Yaakov responded in Lavan Garti, V'tareg mitzvah shamarti. Yaakov responded that Hashem also promises me He'll give me everything that I need to be matzliach. And if I look at this world as a world in which I want to create avodas Hashem, then every bracha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives is zachar, to remember. Everything that I got is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving me these skills and this bracha in order to accomplish something. And therefore, I'm not taking a thing away from Olam Haba. Schar mitzvah b'haya al maleka. Yaakov looked at Esav and said, this is all an avenue. And that explains why Yaakov went back for Pachim Ketanim. Doesn't sound like your regular Gadol story. He went back for Pachim Ketanim. Why? Because Yaakov looked at everything Hashem gave as an avenue to be able to accomplish Avodas Hashem. My wife's grandfather, Shimon Schwab, explained it so beautifully. After Havdalah, we say, Lahavdil ben Kodesh l'chol. We ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to differentiate between what is Kodesh and Chol. Then we say, Zareinu v'kaspeinu yarbek chol. We ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, give us children and give us money, yarbek chol. You would think that's that Kodesh and Chol. No. We ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, rain down all the bracha in the world on us. But if I ask it under the umbrella that I want it for my children in order to raise healthy, happy children who are besimcha, if I'm asking it under the guise that what asir asirenuloch, asir b'shvil shetis ashra, I'm asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give me wealth so I can give it to others, then I'm not asking for myself. I'm asking for a davar shebekdusha. So now let's go back to the statement. Emani kan hakol kan. As long as I'm in the basement, and as long as I'm not giving the time. What do I mean by the time? Schwab again, the pasuk describes Maka Aviv, describes an unbelievable circumstance. Somebody actually hit his father. 2 psukim later, it describes Makal Aviv. It talks about somebody who curses his father. Now I want to be clear. I'm not saying that this is always cause and effect, because sometimes people might be upset. We don't know why always, and there are always different children with different challenges, and we don't know why HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave a certain neshama for us to be able to be the ones to watch. But when I started all the way in the beginning, we have to take responsibilities for action, and we have to recognize that there are repercussions of our actions. There are exceptions. I want to be very clear, because some people might take offense to what I'm about to say. But Rabbi Schwab said, if there's a makeh and a makal, somebody has to withdraw. And in between the pasuk talks about a goynev nefesh umachro. Talks about a person who stole a nefesh and sold him. When things go wrong, take a step back. And did the child know that money was more important? Or you were goynev nefesh umachro? Did you really, really give the child what that child needed? Now, there will be exceptions. Sometimes it might not work that way. And sometimes we don't know why HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us this nisayon. And you know what, I believe I have a rishus to say it. Rav Aaron Kotler, Shneur Kotler's son, who's one of the leading people in Lakewood today, told over the following story. And it's important that the story should be heard because before I finish the other story, the other part, I want you to hear this part. He said when he would walk in the street looking like a teenager with certain challenges, his father would specifically cross the street and walk with him. He said, Dad, I knew you were going the other way. Why would you come across the street? He goes, I don't want anybody for a moment to think I'm not proud that you're my son. He says, I don't want anybody to think for a moment that way. So therefore, I'll cross the street, dafka, to walk with you so that the people should see it. So of course, you know what? Everybody, we recognize that there is, like I said in the beginning, there is siyata d'shmaya. And even with all the kayach, with all the premeditated, all our decisions, that at times HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a different plan. But sometimes we take a mess up. And sometimes it is our fault. And then our responsibility, where there's a mak and makal, is to come and look and say, did I give him the time? Was I goynev nefesh umachro? That's what we say by the Pidyon HaBen. We look at the Kohen looks at the father and say, Ma boys tfei, which one do you want more? Are you going to give up will your child know you'll give everything up for them? Or will you put your time with your child onto the side and wait? I have an expression, to steal it from Annie, tomorrow is always a day away. If we're always going to think tomorrow is when we're going to do it, I know I plan on going on a diet tomorrow. It always winds up being the next day. The reality is the challenge of life is to make sure that tomorrow is today. And not tomorrow is always a day away. So, in fact, the pasuk is saying, Im ani kan. If I'm in the present, I'm enjoying, like Rav Victor Miller is saying, I'm misameach on what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me, then Hakol, everything. Kavod Shemayim is here, my children are here. If I can experience the here and now with my own unique skills, because Hashem gave me my own bracha, and with my own unique challenges, am I nikan? Then I call everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hashem beirach esavim b'kol shal bara l'chvodo. All the Hakol is here. I'd like to end with for me, it's a cousin of mine. So maybe I said too much, but okay, it's a cousin of mine. He has. I'll change the story a little bit. He has a couple of sons that are huge Talmidei Chacham. He has one son that basically found his own path. I want to balance what I just said. And the son got up at his Shever Brachos. And to me, this was probably the best speech I ever heard. He got up and he said, I want to explain to you why I'm here. How I got here. He says, it's a Rashi in Chumash. Kadosh Baruch Hu appears to Avram, and he says, Kach es bincha. Take your son. Rashi says, and if you look at the pasuk, Avram responded to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Yodeya, HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows what's in our life. This was not a game. This was not a dialogue. That was just, he knew exactly what Avram meant. Avram said, Yesh li shnei banim. I have two sons. Es yichidcha. The one, the unique one. They're both unique. Echad yachad la'imo, echad yachad la'imo. To each one, they each have the unique things. Asher ahavta. that you love. What do you mean I love? I love them both. It's Yitzchak. He said, could you imagine Avram Avinu was talking to the Barei Olam? And he said, your beloved son. And Avram didn't know who he was talking about. He said, that's why I'm here. He said, because I believe my father loves me uniquely and equally to my son, to my brother who's been Messiah Shas a number of times. Because we don't know why HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us our challenges, but we also know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the koyach to be able to address them. So when challenges present themselves, yes, like Elionov, we have to figure out how we got there. We have to believe, Ma'aminim b'nei Ma'aminim, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the unique skills and capabilities, and friends, and Rebbeim, and Rabbanim, and Mashpiyim, who will be able to help us navigate that challenge. Because we're not alone in that challenge. But we have to recognize that our avoid is each and every day to show up. And the challenge is that I have to be anikan. Every day I have to be nisgaber. Because if the Chazal tell us that the Yetzer Hara is nisgaber b'chol yom, that means each and every day presents a challenge, a unique challenge, that we have to rise to it in order to be b'simcha in each and every day. Okay?
Is there time for questions?
There are time for questions, yes.
Any questions?
Yes, but I wanted to say, when you answered as far as quickly it's you, right?
Right.
But I lived with Rabbi Ari Senter that it's Kira. It's not a dichotomy to what you said.
No, I understand 100%. We're in agreement, yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like that is part of it is of course, but what you said that we have our own unique capabilities. That is for sure. We have to believe in Hashem. That Hashem believes that we have to believe that Hashem believes in us. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing, right? But the part of what I said was, of course, is if somebody really gets haughty, he says, "Oh, I'm because I do this."
100%. I think where agreement is.
I think I
No, we're not 100%. I agree.
Are you on repeat it?
Okay. The question, I guess, it's going back to the initial discussion of yes, and I've had this discussion within my family numerous times, that the normal, there's an expression that you use at times, is all siyata d'shmaya. I don't like the word all, and I'll explain to you why I don't like the word all. There was a divorced couple. There was a divorced man that was in my office, and painting his ex-wife as the devil reincarnated, and she is the cause why all of her children are having problems. And he's coming to me. It's like, okay. So in the course of the dialogue, I said to him, "Will you accept 10% responsibility, 20% responsibility?" He goes, "No, it's totally her fault." I said, "You know what? If you take 20%, I think I'm empowering you. If I convince you that you're 20% responsible, then you're possibly part of the solution. But as long as you keep on believing that it's somebody else totally, then you've totally abdicated any sense of responsibility." What I think where the balance is 100% siyata d'shmaya. I will never be me'atzliach without HaKadosh Baruch Hu siyata d'shmaya. But I have to recognize that the same way I put on a coat and I go ahead and I'm supposed to lose the weight, and I'm supposed to shmata ma'od b'nafsho seichem, that I have to take responsibility for my physical health. Of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has master plans, but in the end, smoking and being overweight and being this and this and this does contribute to requiring having a tremendous amount of siyata d'shmaya in order to go against the odds. But so I think the balance is I want to advocate for the idea is to recognize that we have koychos, we have to connect.
Our has to be done.
100%, and we have to.
It can only be done with siyata d'shmaya.
Correct, and we have to recognize in the end, I'm not going to be an opera singer. With all the siyata. So yes, there could be a neis nigel. That would probably be a neis nigel. It's Tisha B'Av, I'll be a chazan for Tisha B'Av. But outside of that, I'm tone deaf. So that is not. Novel's chiddush was that he was uniquely talented. Embrace that. Part of Hatzlacha ties into that. Okay?
Meaning that a person really needs to know, and both ends, a person really needs to take responsibility to number one, know who they are. They have to understand what Rob was saying, to understand their toolbox, why Hashem brought us here, and there's, like, it's a two-sided coin. One, you're not taking, I was quoting again with Noah Tzadam, he said, don't take pride, take pleasure. Hashem brought you here with your, right, with your real humility. The definition of humility is knowing.
So I'm going to do a little bit, I'm going to say it's slightly different than Noah, and you can hear what I'm going to say. Okay, what you had said was, don't take pride, take pleasure. Okay, and I hear that 100%. What I would be myself, when I sit with my children, and I say, bracha is a responsibility. It's more than just taking pleasure in. Recognize when HaKadosh Baruch Hu grants us koichos and grants us bracha, He's giving us a pikadon, and it is our responsibility to do something with it. So, to me, denying one's capability is somewhat denying one's responsibility. But if a person has a gift, you're able to administrate, you're able to inspire people. If you would not have connected to what your gift is, you would be denying your responsibility.
Rabbi also wanted to share his responsibility.
Correct.
His talent and Hashem. We learned it from him.
But then again, we wouldn't have been.
So, of a similar vein, that, what I would say, and that really is this week's parsha. What you're saying is, Yonah was running away from his nevuah. I'll explain to you how I understood Yonah Navi running away from his nevuah. It's actually this week's parsha. Moshe tells Yeshua, so Hashem tells Moshe to do samach yodcha, single hand. In the end, when it describes him doing it with two hands. Initially, Moshe says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that the manik should be yotzel l'fneihem, he should go out in front of them, and then come back in front of them. Then later describes that he goes out with them and comes back with them. So is the manik ahead of the people or with the people? So Rabbi Zweig said it fascinating. He said, this is fun. To get up, to speak, to be able to inspire people, that's yotzel l'fneihem. To be able to go to do all the things that are enjoyable and getting accolades, that's fantastic, that's enjoyable. He says when the people fall, and you actually have to help them, walk with them, support them. He says that's much more difficult. The pasuk, Moshe was trying to, and the pasuk says, speak to Yeshua, and Rashi says to tell Yeshua what kind of covet it is to be the man. Then later, when it describes Moshe talking to him, he doesn't refer to him as a man, he refers to him as a parmes. And then it describes that he talks about his olam haba. So Rabbi Zweig explains it like this. It was easy to convince Yeshua to take the job as the manik. It was more difficult to convince Yeshua, which was the second hand, that you really have to deal with the people with their life's challenges. And that Yeshua, you have to think about olam haba. It's not all about being a leader. It's not all about the pomp and circumstance. It's about being there with them to support them, parnas, to be there to support them during the difficult times. So I think the challenge that Yonah had, Yonah didn't want to be the bearer of bad news. One of the most difficult things for me at times is to look somebody in the eye and say, you're making a mistake. It's not easy, but it's so much easier to put your arm around them and tell them everything's good. But Yonah was in that position of having to tell people what they didn't want to hear. That's not so easy always. Yes?
But when you said that we have to take personal responsibility, we have to take a step back. In my life experience, when I take that step back and I have to assess my personal piece in it, and the piece that isn't mine may not be so pleasant, but if I can embrace, like Rob Miller says, that moment, then I can transform myself because that challenge is coming from Kadosh Baruch Hu. And I have found that the challenge became the biggest gift.
That's a moment.
That the hardest lifetimes became the biggest gift from Hashem. Because it gave me a chance. I mean, I signed up for it before I came down here, so I don't remember it. So I'm wondering if that's sort of what you
Okay,
meant. Am I getting what you're...
Well, first of all, I'm trying to understand what you're saying, and I think I do. And
That's
what?
Bonnie Treville said about her.
I should repeat it. Okay. If I'm to understand what you're saying, and I think I do, and we're going to talk this through, is that you're saying when I'm presented with a life challenge, and I withdraw, and I analyze my involvement in that, my contributions, my lack of contributions to it, and I make analysis of it, then I realize that it's a gift and it's a growing opportunity.
No.
Okay, good. I'm listening.
The piece is, I can analyze it, but then I have to do something.
Agreed. Okay.
And that in that process of getting hadracha or doing the personal work or accepting that this is the matzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu put me in, that this is what my neshama needs to go through, that in that is the connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in that is the simcha of the moment, even though it could be a very painful moment.
Okay, agreed. So I think you've now, Daf Yomi, it's, in today's Daf, I think you've beautifully explained the Maimer Chazal, and now we understand it. Explanation. Today's Daf is dealing with the concept of Tshuva Me'ava and Tshuva Me'ira. So it's mostly described in Perek Gimel of Yirmiyahu, and he describes, on one hand, the Gemara refers to Shuvu Banim, that after we've done Tshuva, we become like a beloved child. Then it refers to HaKadosh Baruch Hu being Marapa, healing us. So the Gemara says that in reality, there's two types of Tshuva. Tshuva Me'ira means I want to solve the problem. I want to get rid of the einish. I want to fix what's the problem. Yira is to get all the way, Me'ava is I want to recreate the connection. I want to go all the way back. Now, the Gemara says when you do Tshuva Me'ava, the Zedainas Anasalas Chuyos. It doesn't only mean that you fixed the thing that you did wrong, but literally that challenge itself is a schar for you because you become a better person through the process of the entire challenge. And that, the halach is Paskin, the Rosh Paskins, that the statement of Chazal are meant to be taken on a literal level. The Rosh Paskins that it's preferable to have about Tshuva to be the Shliach Tzibur as opposed to a person who's from birth, because b'makom shabali Tshuvim omdim ain't tzadikim gemur ma'omdim. So therefore he said, send him up to be the Shliach Tzibur. That's the Rosh. So I think the way you're explaining, and I think it's beautifully explained, when I come and I analyze my step, and I realize that I want to make that change, then I actually become, my relationship with Hashem becomes stronger, and the bond is stronger, aspiring that it should be through Ava, as opposed to, this went wrong, and I'm just trying to balance the ship. I really want to go ahead and become Shuvu Banim Shavim. Any other questions?
I was just going to comment on what you said, just to take it a step further, because what you were focusing on was recognizing that when you step back and seeing that it's the Messiah that made you stronger, that made you connect. I actually want to take it a step further. I actually think, that last step that you stepped back and recognize the bracha that came from the Nisayon, the growth that came from the Nisayon, is what really charges your emunah and your connectivity with Hashem.
Yes and no, but I will say to you that if we can get to the point of recognizing that the Nisayon is the gift as we start and we step back.
It's hard to see that while
Okay, so wait,
But if isn't that the goal?
Wait, so I think we can describe certain things that meaning, depending on what we refer to as the Messiah.
Right.
Meaning, accepting that we are imperfect. Shlomo Melech, Shchayra Ani V'Nova, accepting and embracing the fact that we are imperfect. That is a Nisayon, because our natural tendency is to be so defensive about everything that we do. That is an unbelievable Nisayon, to be able to look in the mirror and say, as Shlomo Melech says, Shiva Nofa Tzadik V'Kom. That a tzaddik is not defined as somebody who never did anything wrong. It's the tzaddik is defined as Shiva Nofa. 7 times he got up, brushed himself off, and attacked the new day. If we going to try to build in our mind the definition of a tzaddik is somebody who makes no mistakes, then it is something that's unattainable and we will never ever reach it. But if we accept the idea is taking personal responsibility for our actions and getting up and starting again, trying again. So there's nisyonis which are about ourselves, our own activities. Then there are nisyonis that Hashem brings that are from the outside, like where'd that come from? Like, in which sometimes we're looking as to Hashem, why did my husband lose his job? Why did this happen? Why did this happen? Those are different. And I think we have to separate the two. There's nisyonis which literally takes a huge insight to look at ourselves. And yeah, I'll say it, and if there's okay, I don't have a problem saying it publicly. I've dealt with people that have gone through addiction, and I've helped them through the whole process. And it happens to be, I have a chavrusa, okay, my wife's going to learn, I have a chavrusa with somebody who teaches me the 12 steps. Why? Because that whole process is something that, it's about us. It's about having self-awareness. So there is, I agree with you, meaning, to me, this guy has a self-awareness. This person was in rehab for a year and change. He has a self-awareness that I don't have. So yes, sometimes through the process of nisyonis and analyzing, why do I do this? Why do I make these choices? What is pushing me? What is it? There's a huge, totally different self-awareness when you literally can deal with your demons, and then actually look and learn the process. How did I make such terrible mistakes? And we all make terrible mistakes. We all do. And what is it that pushes our buttons and causes us? And if we can get to that and realize it, it's a whole different world. Then there's other parts which is accepting HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ratzon. And I'll say, where I mean that is, we're all accustomed to 40 days before baby is born. Yatsa Basko comes out and says, Bas Ploni V'Ploni. The end of that medrash is Karka Ploni V'Ploni. And it says, Karka Bias Ploni V'Ploni. Which we're not accustomed to that. But in the end, the Basko came out and said, your choice of jobs Hashem chose. And where you put. There was a reason why I wound up in Wesley Hills. I'm still trying to figure it out. But there's a reason why I wound up in Wesley Hills, and the reason why my congregation wound up with me. And if we accept that it's Basheret, and it's Basheret, then we have a totally different appreciation of our parnasa, where we live. You know what? I will end with that. On that, this is one of my favorite pshatim, and I'll give you a new pshat that I don't think any of you ever heard. We all know that it says Gadol Kriyas Yamsuf, Gadol Kasher Zibuvim Kriyas Yamsuf. Kasher Zibuvim Kriyas Yamsuf. What does that mean? I have to have the mic. What? Kasher, it is difficult. Okay, kasher, it is difficult. It is difficult. Zibuvim Shiduchim Kriyas Yamsuf. What does that mean? Is there really the split? Is there anything that's difficult for Hashem? What do the words even mean? Kasha. That it's difficult, Zibuvim making Shidduchim to Kriyas Yamsuf. So there's one other time in Midrash Chazal that uses the terminology of Kasha by Hashem. Does anybody know where else it's used? The what?
My letters. Kasha, what did you ask?
Kasha lai pridasim. It's talking about Yontif. It's talking about we're on Sukkot. We're celebrating with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Hashem says, Kasha lai pridasim. It's difficult for me to see you go away, and then it's very difficult for me. Therefore, stay an extra day. That's where we got Shmini Atzeres. Kasha is a description that Hashem has, where it's difficult for him to lose the connection between him and us. I had two nieces that would be the older Shidduch, in the parish of the Shidduch birthday, and my cousin, my brother, and my sister would daven all day, and then you know what? They were always connected to Hashem. Hashem said, you know what happened at Kriyas Yamsuf? The Mitzvah were all killed. They found Mitzrayim Mesal Sfasayam. The villain in the story is gone. Kashalai. Kosh Baruch Hu says Kriyas Yamsuf is difficult for me. Because now there'll no longer be that villain that you all connected to, and then you always turn back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vayitzaku el Hashem. It says at this point in time now, everything's good. Kasha, Kriyas Yamsuf is kasha, like the pasuk that the Chazal say by Yontif. Zivugim, the zivug works out, suddenly you forget about it. Oh, Baruch Hashem, my niece got married. Okay, done. You're davening always for that zivug until it comes. Then it comes, then kasha. Hashem says, I give it to you, and you walk away.
So, I'm sorry, but I have another question.
Okay.
Do we have time, Mary?
Okay, I'm done.
Another minute, but that was very, thank you, that was very. I haven't heard that one. Somebody shake hands.
The question I have, and maybe we've been hanging, like I was talking, I sounded like a big shot, Lola Lane, and that, okay, I went through this and I got this connection, but then we have what happened at Surfside, and these people, they didn't do anything wrong. They were, Hashem decided this is what's going on, and then you have the family that happens to.
Okay, I'm going to try, then I'm going to end, and then I apologize. We'll do it like this. One of the challenges I have when I started, that I don't enjoy talking about fire and brimstone and so on and so forth. Why? In Tanakh, in all of Tanakh, there's only one person that's referred to as a Yodei Dasel. The Yodei Dasel knows God's intentions. Does anybody know who that is? Bilam Arusha. That is correct. Bilam Arusha is the only one who's described as the Yodei Dasel. I will never claim to know that I understand Hashem's choices. To the extent that the Pasuk says, the Gemara talks over that Moshe ben Nevuah saw how Rabbi Akiva was going to die. And Moshe cried out, Zu Torah, Zu Schar. He cried out to Hashem, is this? He saw Rabbi Akiva dying, a gruesome death. He said, Zu Torah, Zu Schar. And Hashem responded, Shto kach ol b'machshav l'fanai. This is what Hashem decided. So my answer to you is like this. This was when I was singing Shiva. So my Rebbe, Rabbi Willie, came in and told over the following story. He said, Yosha Ber Soloveitch went to be Menachem over Rishneir, and Rishneir was sitting Shiva on his son. And Rishneir Kaplan. He walks into the room and everybody separates because here they want to see what's going to be the dialogue between the two parties. Yoshever sits down right in front of Rishneir, and the halacha is you're not supposed to talk first to the other. You're supposed to wait for the other to talk. Nothing spoken. 15 minutes, they sit, tears rolling down each other's face, no words are spoken, they get up, and say, sometimes I can't explain what Hamakom. You just have to be there with them. In other words, you can't explain everything to your kids. You just have to hug them and be there when it's difficult. You're not going to be able to wish away all of life's challenges. And I don't have an answer. I will not be able to give an answer. And so, unfortunately, the rabbi's supposed to have all the answers. No, when you're in a hospital room, and you don't have an answer. But you have to just be there. And that's why we say Hamakom. and say, I'm going to be here, I'll experience it with you, I'll cry with you, I'll be here with you, but I'm not going to be able to explain it to you. That's,
Thank you so much.